The race fans wanted more horsepower, well, they got it. The racing on track was amazing. 750 horsepower under the feet of the driver. We're going to break down all the data, and the answer might surprise you. Well, it was Ryan Blaney who took the checkered flag out in the desert, but that's not the big topic of conversation this week. It is all about what was on racetrack, and that is increased horsepower. Basically 80 more horsepower under the hood of the Cup Series, and the drivers seem to love it. The fans seem to love it. I know from my couch, I thought the racing was outstanding. Blaney himself passed more cars on the racetrack to go to victory lane than any other car we have seen on a downforce track in the next-gen era. And while Phoenix Raceway at times can be a little one groove, this weekend I thought it was multi-groove. It was great for the O'Reilly on Saturday, but especially impressive on Sunday. I think the increased horsepower had a lot to do with it. But let's hear what the drivers had to say. Chase Briscoe, driver of the 19.
You're just driving this track so different than what you've had to before. I mean, your corners are backed up a little bit more just because you're going faster down the straightaway, but the biggest thing is you're just sliding so much, you know, center of the corner to exit. I mean, there's a lot of times I'm not even wide open till I'm literally like going down the straightaway, where in the past here, you're wide open way before you even get there. I know when we go to Darlington and places, it's going to be out of control, so it's going to be interesting for sure.
Always appreciate Bob Pockris with the hard-hitting questions, getting that great sound from Chase. So that's what it felt like from behind the wheel. But let's go into the lab here and look exactly what it did to the car itself. So let's bring up our SMT data. There's a lot going on here. Let's start with the information on the right. The top lines, that's miles per hour. There are two lines because the blue line is this year. The orange line would be last year in practice. The middle squiggly line, throttle. So this right here, this is all throttle. That's Chase's application of the throttle. The bottom is brake. Once again, blue line this year, orange last year. To give you an idea on the racetrack, you see over here we have the solid 19 car. Once again, that's the blue line, that's this year. The shadow car, like you're playing a video game at home, that is last year's practice lap. So as we hit play, you're going to see the 2 laps overall and the overlay. The lines match the ones on the right. The red line right there, that's where they get on the brake. The red goes away where they get on the gas. Exiting turn 2 here at Phoenix, we're going to see them go down the back straightaway. If you look over to the right, you have this vertical red line kind of going with it. You're going to see top speed. Both cars lift, go down into turn 3, and then back to the start-finish line. So that's what it looks like, but what's really happening. When we dive into the data a little bit deeper, let's first focus on what Briscoe talked about, which is the throttle. So this middle section right here. I would expect there's a little difference here, but when you look at the orange versus the blue line, they kind of start in the same location and they get to wide open in the same location. Really, both ends of the racetrack are the same. So while it felt very different behind the wheel, that's actually not where I see the difference at all. I see the difference on the top. The one that jumps out the most to me is miles per hour. So if we look at max miles per hour, I'm going to play this forward. We're going to get to the end of the front stretch, which is the fastest area on the racetrack, and we're going to pause it right there. And we'll take a look. So 162.5 on this lap, a little under 160. That was very consistent. I've looked through all the data from the race, and I would say that the new horsepower package, the increased horsepower, is like 2 to 3 miles per hour faster on the end of the front stretch. We're going to see the same type of increase on the back stretch. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is let's talk middle of the corner. Pause it right here. So when we look at the middle of the corner, you see how the lines completely overlap right here? I mean, they got to the same point. It's the same tire. It's the same aero on the same racetrack. So while we talk a lot about horsepower, when you're not in the throttle, your cornering potential is the same. So you have to get down to the same speed to make the corner, much like leaving the interstate. You can only get on the off-ramp at a certain speed. It doesn't matter how fast you were on the interstate, you can only go the same speed on the middle of the off-ramp. That's what the drivers are battling. So now we're going to exit 1 and 2. Down the back stretch, we're going to see the same thing again. Even though we left the corner at the same speed, at the end of the straightaway, we're going to see an increase of, once again, 3.5 miles per hour. Why does that matter? Well, I think it really matters because if you're going faster at the end of the straightaway and you're going through the corner at the same speed, the magic is where you have to get off the throttle. So when you start to look at the braking area, and as you look at the car animation, when they get on the brakes there, it's going to be in the red. So I'm going to get it all the way at the end of the front stretch, and we'll talk about where they lift into the corner. So if you look right here, the current car, the 2026 car, is on the brakes already. It's running 162.5 miles per hour, so he has to lift right here to slow down enough into the corner. If you look at last year's car, he still has to go all the way to here, right? So what is that, 3 car lengths probably in this area right here? He can drive in 3 car lengths deeper. Basically what that means is with increased horsepower, you have to have increased braking zones, longer braking zones. Why does that matter? Listen, if you can drive all the way into the corner and then stomp on the brakes, there's no opportunity to pass. Everybody just chases each other into the corner. If you're going faster, so you have to lift sooner, and I'm a little better than you, I have a chance of pulling out of line and kind of out-braking you. So I think longer braking zones are as important as anything we see with the increased horsepower. So when you think about horsepower and how it drives and the overall speed, I actually think what it does at the end of the straightaway into the corner where it makes the most difference specifically at the short tracks. And you see it at both ends of the racetrack. We can kind of play it forward. That's hitting in 1 and 2. I will say in 3 and 4, it's a smaller difference. I'm not sure if that's the banking in 3 and 4. Maybe the 19 was just a little bit more secure this year into 3 than it was last year. But when you get down to this end of the racetrack, you're going to see the same thing. I'll back it up, but it's very small, right? I mean, you're talking maybe only 1 car length different at this end of the racetrack right here. So I know that it was Briscoe's thought that on the throttle and slipping and sliding was the absolute difference, and I'm sure that's what it felt like behind the wheel. But when I go in the lab and look specifically at the data, it's actually top speed, and when they have to get on the brakes, that was the big difference from 2025 to 2026 at Phoenix. So if you like the racing at Phoenix, you like the increased horsepower, where else are you going to see it? Well, you see it at the road courses, but that's a little bit different animal. How about ovals? I think you're going to see Richmond, Martinsville, New Hampshire, St. Louis, that style of racetrack, very similar to Phoenix, where the braking and the braking zone perhaps has a chance to change the races. But those aren't the only tracks that are changing this year. Bristol, Darlington, those tracks also will have a power change. What's crazy, though, is they'll have an aero change as well. So let's talk about what exactly that is. Well, let's remind everybody the difference, right? At the top, you're going to see the short track package. What I'm really focused on right here is the diffuser, right? This part underneath the floor compared to this big, long diffuser underneath the intermediate package, right? The intermediate now is 1.5 miles and over only. Darlington no longer applies. That used to be intermediate. Now it will be considered short track. The other change that I think everybody knows about, and it's very easy to see, and that's the spoiler, right? The little spoiler to go with the small diffusers. Just less overall downforce and a much looser balance, actually. You lose a lot of rear downforce. So at Bristol, I think specifically, it's not going to make a huge difference because there's so much vertical load. Remember, with all that banking, you're squished into the track. So the aero isn't as dominant as you might think. I think the horsepower will be cool, the lap times will be faster, and I think that'll make it more exciting. I don't think the aero will be a big difference. Now, Darlington, Briscoe already mentioned it. He's already thinking about it. I will tell you the hardest track to drive in 2026, without a doubt, will be the track Too Tough to Tame. The nickname will ring true when the Cup cars head to Darlington. When you start adding 80 horsepower, dump all the downforce off, and then dump most of it off the back of these race cars at a track that already wears tires, Darlington is going to be an absolute animal. For more NASCAR Inside the Race, you can find it here on NASCAR's YouTube channel, and every Monday we head back into Letarte's lab to break down what happened on Sunday.